Kelly Ripa had spent most of her adult life believing that integrity was something you simply carried, like a good pair of shoes or a reliable sense of humor. You didn't announce it. You didn't catalog it. You just lived it. That belief had served her well through decades of early call times, live television, raising 3 children, and navigating the peculiar social currents of New York celebrity circles. She had never stolen so much as a free sample she wasn't entitled to. Not a pen from a hotel room. Not a magazine from a waiting room. Not even a grape from a grocery store display when no one was looking. Until the night of the dinner party. It was a mild August evening in the Hamptons, the kind that made people linger outside longer than they intended. The house belonged to a couple Kelly and Mark had known for years, successful, private, the sort of people who collected art and told stories that circled back on themselves with perfect timing. The dining table was long and low, candles already dripping wax onto linen, the air thick with the smell of grilled fish, and something herbal that made Kelly's stomach tighten with anticipation. Mark was in his element, pouring wine, laughing too loudly at a story about someone's disastrous attempt at renovating a barn. Kelly sat with her elbows lightly on the table, listening, contributing when the conversation swung her way, the practiced ease of someone who had spent years making strangers feel like old friends on national television. The talk started harmlessly enough. Someone mentioned an 80s crush. The table lit up. Names flew. John Taylor from Duran Duran, a young Johnny Depp, that one guy from a forgotten teen movie whose name no one could quite remember but whose poster had hung in every locker. Kelly offered her own, something light and self-deprecating, and the laughter rolled easily. Then Mark, never one to leave a good thread alone, leaned forward with that particular spark in his eye. Has anybody here ever stolen anything? The question landed like a stone in still water. For a beat, the only sound was the clink of a fork against a plate. Then the confessions began, casual at first, then gathering momentum. One friend, an established producer, the kind of person who wore expensive watches without looking at them, admitted to lifting a pack of bazooka bubblegum from a convenience store in 5th grade. The detail was specific. The pink wrapper, the way the cashier had been distracted by a delivery truck, the sugary guilt that had lasted exactly until the next recess. Another guest, a designer whose work appeared in glossy magazines, confessed to pocketing fresh herbs from a grocery store earlier that same day. I needed basil for the pasta, she said, shrugging. They always overcharge for the little plastic packs. I just took a few stems. The table erupted. Someone else owned up to walking out of a hotel with a bathrobe years ago. Another recalled borrowing a library book in college and never returning it. The stories grew smaller and more ordinary, the kind of minor moral lapses that people polish into dinner party anecdotes once enough time has passed. Mark grinned across the table at Kelly. We are friends with the biggest thieves. Kelly felt the attention shift. She smiled, the automatic hostess smile, but her mind was already racing through a mental inventory. Had she ever? Truly ever? There had been moments of temptation, extra napkins at a cafe, a forgotten umbrella left on a subway seat, but she had always left them where they were. Her parents had raised her with a strict, almost old-fashioned sense of right and wrong. You paid for what you took. You returned what wasn't yours. You didn't cross that line, no matter how small the prize. I had never stolen anything, she said finally. The table went quiet for half a second. Then the teasing began. It was good-natured, the way friends tease when they sense a soft spot. Come on, Kelly. Never? Not even once? Not a single candy bar? Not a hotel shampoo? Someone pointed out that she was the only person at the table without a story. Mark, ever the loving instigator, amplified it. You were the only person that had never stolen anything. The laughter swelled. Kelly felt her cheeks warm. She laughed along, the way she always did when the spotlight found an unexpected angle. But underneath the performance, something small and sharp settled in her chest. She had been shamed, playfully, affectionately, but shamed nonetheless, for the one thing she had always considered a quiet point of pride. The evening continued. Dessert arrived. More wine. The conversation moved on to other topics, safer ones. But the feeling lingered. Later, in the car on the way home, Mark glanced over at her. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said. "Just realizing I'm the only honest person we know." He laughed. She did too. But that night, lying in bed with the windows open to the sound of distant waves, she kept replaying the moment. Established people, successful people, people she liked and respected, all of them with their small, harmless crimes. And her, the odd one out, the woman who had never crossed the line. The following weekend they took the boat out. It was one of those perfect late summer days when the water looked like polished glass and the sky refused to darken. Kelly had planned a simple lunch, tomato and mozzarella sandwiches, the kind that required almost nothing except good ingredients and a little care. She had bought the tomatoes the day before, ripe and heavy. The mozzarella was fresh. The bread was from a bakery that still sliced it by hand. The only missing piece was basil. Their own plant had died. A bad batch, or too much sun, or simple neglect in the middle of a busy season. The leaves had turned brown and brittle overnight. Kelly stood in the small galley of the boat, staring at the empty pot, and felt a flicker of irritation. Then she remembered the marina. The herb garden sat near the dock, a neat collection of raised beds maintained by the marina staff for anyone who needed a sprig of this or that. Rosemary, thyme, mint, and, of course, basil. Lush, green, almost defiant in its abundance. Kelly had walked past it dozens of times without a second thought. Today she stopped. She looked around. No one was watching. The dock was quiet. Mark was somewhere below, checking the engine or pretending to. The children, if they had been younger, might have been racing up and down the planks, but they were grown now, off living their own lives. The moment felt strangely private. Kelly reached out. The basil leaves were soft and fragrant under her fingers. She broke off 3 pieces, 3 leaves, really nothing more. The plant barely noticed. She held them in her palm for a second, feeling the absurdity of it, the tiny weight of the act. Then she slipped them into a small plastic bag she had brought for leftovers and carried them back to the boat. She made the sandwiches carefully, layering the mozzarella and tomato, tucking the stolen basil between them like a secret. The smell rose immediately, bright and green. When Mark came up from below, he raised an eyebrow.